This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, translucent human being. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a story entitled Pale Studies, posted to the Creepypasta Wikia. We're going to read it, react to it, see what it has on offer, and give a little bit of literary critique as we go along. So let's get right into this and see what it has on store for us. In store for us, we'll see. Please, sit, I implore you. Don't call me a buffoon like those fools at the university, and don't pity me with that sad look those poor sods of nurses give. Okay, so this is very British. The events I will recall to you are completely true, no matter how insane, irregular, or incomplete they may seem. So that starts off in quotations, and then it doesn't do an end quote, and now we're going to go right into quotations again, which is a little weird. Not sure the point of that. It seems like every paragraph starts that way. Anyway, it was a gloomy, dark, and chilled Saturday night. On the evening of June 10th, I remember the odd sensation my body experienced with almost pinpoint accuracy. The air was extremely crisp in the form of a strangely bitter wind. This was unusual because the day was an extremely warm and miserable one. I remember my nose catching the ghoulish channel, rotting stench of something awful. But most of all, I remember the sickly pale glow of the full spectral moon. I don't know why I was in that damned place, nor why Edmund dragged me into his infernal dealings. In the past months, something changed in him. His once brilliant eyes filled with conquest and an almost childish curiosity for lore and education has since gone over, and his once ecstatic personality has become bitter and envenomed with hate. I didn't dare question his expeditions for fear he would kill me. Ellipses. So let's unpack what it is we're getting here. We're being told that it seems that we're in some sort of university setting because they're both studying something. And Edmund has some sort of infernal dealings. I can think of an Edmund that has infernal dealings. Anyway, this is very much so telling us that there's something Lovecraftian going on. There's a spectral moon. There's a sickly glow. Maybe there's going to be werewolves. I'm guessing Lovecraftian werewolves. Kind of getting a Bloodborne vibe out of this. But the way that everything is phrased seems antiquated, and I wonder if that's on purpose. Kind of seems like this faux antiquated thing. I'm not necessarily buying it, but we'll see what else we have on offer. It is also weird, the phrase, I remember the odd sensation my body experienced with an almost pinpoint accuracy. Can you, the person listening to this, pinpoint a sensation in a body as a memory? I'm trying to figure out what that phrase means. It's a little weird, a little wordy. I'm not sure that they have an idea of what it is they're trying to convey. Anyway, I'm sorry, a doddering old man like me must have been rambling on. You look fairly pale. Would you like a drink? Here, have a glass of gin. One of my true vices, I admit. A glass of gin. Glass of gin sounds good right about now. It's interesting to note that gin as a spirit is kind of dying off. People aren't making it as much because people aren't ordering it as much. So next time you go to a bar, order yourself a neat gin or a gin and tonic. Gin goes with a lot of things that vodka goes with. People just don't think about it. So think about it. You're going to seem like a classy person. Press that date. Get a gin. Make yourself look like an old man. As I was saying, Edmund had dragged me out to some unmentionable and god-awful crypt to dig up who knows what. He had a bizarre look on his face, one of less childish curiosity and more corrupt lust for knowledge long lost to mortal man. This is a little overbearing, but I guess that is kind of the Lovecraftian way, is to be overbearing. But the idea of like less childish curiosity and more corrupt knowledge, lust for knowledge, lost to mortal man, it's never been my thing personally. He seemed to believe he could steal knowledge from a rotting corpse. I thought he was a fool, but I didn't tell him that. I did, however, make the mistake of asking him what he wanted so damn badly. Immediately, his black-haired head shot up and gave me a look out of his dull, bloodshot eyes that contained more hatred than any mortal vessel should ever enclose inside of itself, and looked down just as quickly without looking up again in a low, gravelly, weary voice. 2 simple words: keep digging. Alright, so if you are into Lovecraftian styles of writing with a very verbose style and really being melodramatic about every single little thing, then please tell me how you feel about this, because maybe I'm not the best critic, but it's just too heavy-handed for me personally. I don't know what other people think, so feedback would be appreciated in the comments below. I'm sorry. I haven't been up this late in a very long time. Allow me to open a window. Ahem. Sorry. Continuing on, Edmund and I continued antagonizing silence for some time. It felt as if we had been digging for hours with no fruitful results for our brutish and ghastly endeavor. But I was excited once we felt our spade strike the solid relief of a coffin beneath the dirt and ancient muck. With as much strength as we could muster, we reached our strangely frigid yet oddly sweaty hands down and pulled off the lid, holding whatever wicked, nefarious enigma lied within. It's just weird to hear a person's hands, like a pair of people's hands nonetheless, people who are normal human beings, have their hands described as strangely frigid yet oddly sweaty. I just don't know how to feel about that. It seems like in terms of the words being used, it's all very there to evoke horror, but not necessarily what's happening is all that horrific. But who knows? This is jotting back and forth between the person who is a dondering old man with a cabinet full of gin, telling us the story and actually going back into the story. So this is a very campfire story kind of thing. No, not campfire story. Very, trying to think of the phrase for it. The shifts back in time where it's incorporating us into the story is a nice detail and does suit the style of horror story that I think that they're going for. So that's a plus for sure. What I saw in the dark and on that dark and frigid night would make even the most seasoned mortician gasp. It was a corpse that, while still ravaged by time, was unnaturally preserved so that some minute details were still slightly decipherable. The most horribly noticeable thing about it, though, was the inhuman nature of its structure, almost as if it had been done unnaturally by itself while the flesh still functioned. The legs and torso were extended and thinned as if they were through some sort of torture device. The skin was pallid and dull as opposed to the rotted amber it should have been. The fingers were cruelly sharpened and the skin shaven off at the ends. What does it mean by at the ends? I'm not sure. Oh, of the fingers. Okay, gotcha. And its ancient skull appeared as one of the sleeping man, that the victim of a gruesome case of trepanation with dried blood still calloused along the edges. Okay, so we're getting something more interesting here. This body is unnaturally preserved. That's cool. And it has distorted features in some way, but the distorted features kind of generic in the way that they're being described, but I still am on board with that. I'm getting more into this story as we go along. But as I watched, aghast and in horror at the grisly sight, Edmund had found exactly what he was looking for. A small note clutched in the bloodied hands of this fetid corpse, and as he groped at the yellow roll, I got a closer look and realized that it was not human skin, but appeared to be that of the same material as Al-Azif, an abominable book written by some Arab pariah. He held it high above his head. The moon was full, and it began to shine brightly with an almost malign sentience. And as he spoke the words written on that vile note, and while I know not what it means, I remember with perfect clarity as it came out of his lips. He spoke the words, "My Gisapai ki Kamana Liech Bech or Gavana Kegana Kula." And as the last guttural word left his tired mouth, an almost echoing tone, lightning struck and began to rain. Edmund repeated the words on that accursed note God knows how many times, over and over in the same damned tone. Okay, so he's casting some sort of spell. Has this, note written from some sort of Necronomicon kind of thing. But let's press on. But then he dropped it, gasping for breath, and he looked at me with the curious and soft glance I had known before, but still not the full conquest or wonder, but instead filled with tears and depression. He began to weep, his watery tears streaming down his face faster than the rain, and through his moaning and wailing cries, I began to hear music. One that I had never experienced in my life. It was ethereal, almost dreamlike, and as the music played, Edmund looked at me, and out of his puffy, night-stained face he bawled, "God, what have I done?" As he spoke this, though, his tears and the music struck a sour note. So we have one more paragraph to work with. It seems that we're not going back and forth between the recollection of the story and the modern times sipping our gin, which is unfortunate because I want to sip our gin. But let's polish this off and see where it goes. I noticed it had changed from a jubilant and angelic chorus to a deep, slow, gloomy dirge. The wind grew faster, the dirge slower and louder, and Edmund's berserk cries grew louder and more indistinct. Then a flash of thunder struck. My eyes were blinded by this sudden shock, and when they recovered, Edmund, the music, and the rain were all gone. The only thing that remained was the open coffin and the note. I replaced the lid to the coffin, reburied it in the ground, and left without a word. No one since has asked about Edmund's death, and anyone whom I tell this story to believes I should be put into the local asylum. So here I am, living with the memories and telling my story to another young man who thinks I'm a damned fool. This night has been really taxing on my brain and mental well-being. I would appreciate it if you left my house out. And that's how the story ends. Okay, so kind of anticlimactic ending when we get brought back into the present of just like, get out my house. But in terms of where the story took me, I'm kind of, kind of more forgiving on some of the way that it's written now. Definitely let me know what you think. I think that the instances of Lovecraftian themes there aren't played too heavy. What we could get is a story that's a little bit longer with smaller paragraphs, looking at some of the comments down here that have been written. Slenderman is real, is saying a lot of run-ons, but it is a well-made pasta overall. I'm not so generous on the ratings, but I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a little generous, but I can see an argument for that for sure. Seeing a lot of other arguments about the vocabulary. Advanced vocabulary does not make for a good story. Tinnitus Broas. You don't need to use complex words in every sentence, says Grizzly Bear. And then we have a response from the author. Thank you for the feedback. That was also one thing I heard from my colleagues. Part of the reasoning behind this is I wrote this after reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, and I guess I was a little inspired by that. Yeah, I would dial it back just a tad, or a significant amount, like 30% less, and kind of ease this into it, not have it be so overbearing. Put a little bit in the first paragraph to get us in, and then kind of ease it back in, because it's pretty overbearing. We don't need the way that a person's eyelids are described to be all Lovecraftian, because it was just a dude with determination to find out what's in the grave. So we don't know the exact mystery of what the note was. All we know is that it made a person disappear, and that they feel as though they made a mistake right before they disappeared. They had sadness and depression and melancholy in their eyes. That's good. That they were upset. But overall, nice mystery. I like the skeleton of the story more than the way that it's written. Let me know what your comments are down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this, please do check out the Fear Fiction podcast where myself, Abysme, and Slime Beast read stories and bullshit while we do it. That show is a lot less about the critical aspects of stories, although there's that as well, but more about laughing and reading a story at the same time. So if you enjoyed this, then you'll definitely enjoy that. Time to talk about our sponsor of the day, which is Morticia Adams Tanning Salon, the only tanning salon endorsed by the Crypt Keeper.